All right, Assalamu alaikum, dear believers. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good afternoon, happy Sunday. On behalf of the resident Imam Tariq El-Amin, and the Talim Committee, which is myself, Dr. Aisha El-Amin, and Drs. Gloria Brashear and Dr. Lionel Allen. I welcome you to Masjid Al-Taqwa's Talim for this kind of cold day in the first weekend, the first Sunday in December. Please note that we are recording this Talim, and this Talim, along with the others, can be found on our YouTube page, Masjid Al-Taqwa. So if you have not already subscribed, please do. Please share the links with your friends, with your family members. If you find any of the Talims and the Jum'ahs of benefit to yourself, inshallah, spreading them to others will allow them to also get that benefit. Today, we have someone who really doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to introduce her anyway. Rasheedah Fitzpatrick, longtime member of the community, whose parents are a part of our legacy as Wardi Muhammad's community. Teachers, imams. She comes from a long line of just beautiful, beautiful souls. And she is today talking about unpacking what happened to you in your childhood. We have the honor of having her again this week. Last week, as many of you know, we had a very impactful Talim, and many of you talked to me and said, "Oh, we have to have her back." And I'm just so honored that Rasheedah allocated more time today to share with us and share her wisdom. She's been an educator in the public schools for many years, and has had just several different scenarios that she's helped me out with personally. So I'm going to release the mic, and I'll begin sharing my screen, Rasheedah, because I know you've prepared a presentation for today.
Assalamu alaikum.
Also, believers, please do mute your microphones if you have not. I know sometimes we think everything is very quiet in our houses, but when a microphone is on it, it is not so quiet. So you just go ahead and tell me when you want me to advance, and I will do so.
All right. Assalamu alaikum. I wanted to start off with saying, La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Today I wanted to speak to you, the community, about just before we can begin any kind of parenting classes, we have to, of course, start with the beginning, which is the parent. So topic today is unpacking what happened to you in your childhood, how your parenting style is impacted by your formative years. You could go. All right, I like to always begin with Hadith or the Quran in order to just have that as my foundation. So Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The Holy Prophet Sallallahu instructed, one who believes with his son lovingly, Allah will grant him one good deed. He also informed, love your child more. Allah grants one higher stage in paradise, whose distance is 500 years for each act of love. This gains importance in the present time, where love has lost its meaning in the household. Love and care has departed, leading to a society and a community devoid of amenity. Indeed, each of you is a shepherd, and each of you will be questioned regarding his flock. The commander who is in authority over people is responsible, and he will be questioned regarding his responsibility. The man is responsible over the inhabitants of his house, and he is the one who will be questioned about them. The wife is responsible in her husband's house, and she will be questioned about it. The servant is responsible regarding his master's property, and he will be questioned about it. Indeed, each of you is a shepherd, and each of you will be questioned about his flock. You can proceed. Okay. Whoopings, a history. This is a short video that just touches on where the whooping started.
And in our culture, before enslavement, our children were never beaten. According to the American Psychological Association.
Okay, did you just start being able to hear it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna start it over.
Whooping our children has always been assumed to be a part of Black culture. We do it because we love them, so we can ensure they learn to act right. But what if whoopings actually teach our children something completely different? Many of us remember our parents giving us something to cry about. Whooping helps children behave. It's a part of Black culture, right? But what if what we think we know about whooping is actually a lie? Whooping doesn't actually start with us. It was white Europeans who punished their children with severe beatings and lashings. The more severe, the better. So how do we discipline children in our culture? Before enslavement, our children were never beaten. According to the American Psychological Association, historians have found no evidence that physical discipline of children existed in pre-colonial West African societies prior to the Atlantic slave trade. Children in many West African cultures were considered to be connected with the afterlife, and whooping children was thought to scare off the soul. So why did we start whooping our children? For centuries, Black children were in danger. One wrong step and a white person could attack, enslave, or kill them at will. Whooping children into obedience was a form of protection. We still carry much of that generational trauma today. The act of whooping our children is rooted in white supremacy. It's not a part of the way Black people historically cared for our children. Our culture was built on love, not violence. And as we continue to free ourselves from white supremacy, we might also want to leave whooping behind.
This video was made into a TikTok, and this is how we have normalized whooping our children to the point where we've almost...
Come in there again. So you thought I wasn't gonna find out that the principal called me? You might as well get ready to have the belt dude in hot water right now. And whatever you got to do, What's up on that screen for clip?
Okay, so from that video, I think you all could see that it was pretty much a skit of what happens in the household when a parent has been told that, you know, your child's been acting up in school. So the traditional response has been, you know, then you must want this whooping. And one of the things from the comments from that particular video was, when I hear those sounds, my PTSD flares up. And for me, it actually did flare up. It was very difficult for me to even watch the videos because it did trigger some of those feelings back from when I did receive that kind of a consequence for my behavior. So you can go to the next slide. It says, this is from the interview with Dr. Stacy Patton. She wrote the book, Spare the Kids, Why Whooping Children Won't Save Black America. She had it was an interview done in Ebony magazine, and I just grabbed one of the questions that I thought was very poignant. It says, why do we think we hit our children? Dr. Stacy Patton, people think that hitting a child is a form of teaching. We think it will protect them, and people grow up to invert the violence they experience as children. And sometimes something that was good, particularly in African American culture. As a people, we attribute our success to having had our bodies processed through violence. And quite frankly, what it does is confirm a long-lasting racist narrative about Black bodies. The only way to control us, the only way to make us good, law-abiding, moral people is with a good whooping. It seems that we are unconsciously agree with that narrative. You go to the next slide, please. Now, as for me, I did that. I cannot fault anyone but and not acknowledge my own part in it. My evolution as a parent, as you can see, the picture is kind of blurry, but I have a grown son who's 30 years old, and then I also have a set of 14-year-old twins now. So as you can see, there's a huge gap in the age, and all praise to Allah. With that gap came a lot of understanding and an evolution of my thinking about what good parenting is. I do see a lot of a stark difference between my 30-year-old and my 14-year-old, just in how they respond to stress and how they respond to them not being in agreement with something I've said. It is just a lot more compassion and love between my conversations with my 14-year-old than it was with my 30-year-old. My 30-year-old, it was much like I truly did adopt the whole idea that this is how I got to teach him to mind me, to make sure that I'd rather whoop him than quote unquote the police whoop him, so to speak. And that has, I can honestly say, made a stark difference, as I said, in their personalities and just how they relate to other people. So this presentation is for me to publicly say that I apologize to my oldest son because I did not know any better. But having known better, I am trying to do better by my twins. And I do see a difference in it, and I am extremely appreciative of the evolution that Allah has blessed me to have in how I parent my children. You can go to the next slide. So PTSD in the Black community, a different perspective on the term. It's a short video that talks about what PTSD is for African Americans.
Theory that really looks at
You hear?
multi-generational trauma.
Okay, sorry.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome is an explanatory theory that really looks at multi-generational trauma. One of the things that's difficult for people is their first response is, oh my God, that happened so long ago. We're talking about people being captured, shipped, sold, beaten, raped, experimented on. And then you have to ask the question, did the trauma continue? Yes, so 300 years of trauma, no help, freed. No help, more trauma. If it's a sustained trauma, then the impact of that is also sustained. When we look at multi-generational trauma, we're looking at people who are maybe victims of natural disasters and their families and their children and generations of folks who have experienced war. And we know that there are residual mental, emotional, traumatic impact. And what I did was I started to look at the African American experience, starting with slavery, as a real clear, long enduring trauma. I started to see that there were clear connections between that survival behavior and contemporary living in African American experience. I started to see common behaviors that I took for granted as, well, cultural. There's adaptive behaviors, survival behaviors. Well, what are they? Let's just say 2019, you have a Black mother and a white mother. The sons go to school together. They find themselves at a meeting. The Black mother leans over to the white mother and says, I just wanted to mention to you that I noticed that your son is really doing quite well. And the white mother's response is, oh, thank you. She begins to go on and on about he won the science fair, his uncle's an astronaut. She's just oozing. She realizes the Black mother's son is actually excelling her son. And she says, well, wait a minute. Your son's the one that's really coming along. And the Black mother responds, oh my God, he's a handful, but oh, he just works my nerves. Now, when I'm working with African American people, it doesn't matter what the audience is. It doesn't matter what class. If I were to ask, is she very proud while she's saying those denigrating things? And everybody laughs and goes, of course, there's a secret. Because everybody black knows that even though the black mother is going, oh my God, she's really proud. So now let's roll that scene back 300 years. And let's say this black mother is working in the fields and a white slave owner comes through and says, wow, that boy is really coming along. What is she gonna say? No, he's not. He's stupid. He's shiftless. He can't work because I don't want you to sell him. So I denigrate them to protect them. That is called appropriate adaptation when living in a hostile environment. The little white boy, say Timmy, he feels really comfortable and happy about what his mom just said about him. And Trey looks at his mom and wonders, why can't you be proud of me? Because he doesn't understand the secret yet. And by the time he learns the secret, he will have already been injured by it. Post-traumatic slave syndrome. PTSD is a disorder that occurs as a result of a single trauma. You don't even have to be there to actually get a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. You could just hear about something horrific happening to someone you love. So you have people who have experienced it firsthand, people who have witnessed it in their environment, right? People who are continuing to be oppressed. That exacerbates any possibility of healing. So it's not post-traumatic stress disorder, because then it becomes part of what we call your socialization process. So you begin to normalize a way of living and being, everything from what we eat to what we believe it means to be a friend. All of these things are colored by history. And if you don't understand it, you're going to fold in things that you've just assumed are normal. But post-traumatic stress disorder, exaggerated startle response, outbursts of anger, feeling of foreshortened future. There was a point where there were African-American children in different urban settings that didn't expect to live to be adults because they saw so much death, that they started planning their funerals like at 13, 12, as young as 10. When you start looking at the simple biology, you start looking at the impact of stress on health. And while we look at general stress, we know finances, you have illnesses, all these different things. How about being black? How does factoring in being black in America impact your stress level and therefore your body's ability to operate its own immune system? Because we know it compromises the immune system. Once you understand it, then you can deal with it. Because you see, it's habitual. You're socialized. It becomes part of your being. So one of the ways you begin to address that multi-generational trauma is to work with the people it directly impacts, to hear from them. And when you give the people the information, they can use it. I think the first order of business is beginning to have a conversation. And the other is to educate the larger society. You have to stop the assault. So this is not purely a clinical thing. This requires social justice and change. That's where part of the healing is. It's not in a clinical setting or in a pill. It's in fairness and justice and safety and equity. We got to work with some of those clinical things, some of those issues of panic and anxiety. And we also have to deal with the fact that you have a system that is set up to oppress you and to continue to injure you. Both those things have to be dealt with. And they cannot singularly by themselves affect a change. They have to be done collectively.
In Hampton, once known as Point Comfort, the very spot where the first enslaved Africans arrived in America 401 years ago in 1619. The atrocities my ancestors endured, packed and stacked on slave ships like pieces of property, brought this country to build it with their blood, sweat, and tears. Psychiatrists say trauma like that can affect a people for generations. 7-year-old Wenta Amore Rogers' passion during a recent protest in New York struck a chord across the country. The amount of passion in her voice, in her eyes for a child that young made me not just see her, it made me see our ancestors before her.
So that little girl learned that from history. She learned that from her parents. And that's even like why it's so important for us to continue to tell the story.
Nationally renowned psychiatrist Dr. Dion Metzger says the unrest we see today is 401 years in the making.
And the point of slavery to the point of, whippings and killing and lynchings, even, in generations after that. But the issue is that that fear gets instilled into the children because parents are trying to protect their children. So that fearfulness, I think, is what's passed on, in addition to the trauma, just having to deal with the physical abuse, the sexual abuse.
The world has all been a significant location in the dark history of racism.
Metzger says the outcry we're seeing today at peaceful rallies, sharing stories and fighting against injustice can be a form of healing.
And it's not going to be a quick fix. Us telling our stories is one big part of it. Psychiatrists, I'm going to say therapy. It's like at this point, with all the images that we're seeing, all of the videos, it's a lot. And a lot of people think in order for you to suffer from PTSD, you have to be a victim. So you would have to have been one of those people like George Floyd or Breonna Taylor. No, you can still have the same traumatic impact just from watching the video. And sometimes it's even greater if you identify with the person.
Is it possible that as Black people, we are experiencing a PTSD from what they went through 401 years ago?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just because we didn't experience it, us learning about the history or even from family stories, it's the same thing.
And that's why for so many in the Black community, it's not only about George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor. It's about the trauma that began right here in Hampton 401 years ago. In Hampton, I'm Jessica Larche, News 3.
Okay, so again, the point of me sharing that with you all is to also recognize, like, okay, if you say as a parent, well, I don't whoop my children, and I treat my children the way that, I would want to be treated. All of that being said, we still have to recognize the role that mass media has had and what our children have been exposed to, and why it's so important for us to do what's necessary to help them through this particular time period and not ignore it. So it says we don't make the connection between historical traumas, the science that talks about the psychological damage that hidden children has, the chronic illnesses that get produced by hidden children, the domestic violence between Black men and women, or the shootings in the streets. We don't take a moment to stop and look and say, how much of that is attributed to what happened to us in the foundational moments of our lives, which is childhood. We don't make those connections. And this is again from that book by Dr. Stacy Patton. So it's extremely important for us to talk about it and for us to be able to explain to our children that sometimes when we see certain behaviors and when they're listening to certain music or they're watching certain videos, while they might find it very entertaining, we as a parent have to guard their minds and to let them know that you exposing yourself to that kind of music, you exposing yourself to that kind of trauma is doing irreparable harm to your development. And we also have to explain to our children, we cannot ignore when events like this do happen in our society. We have to have the conversations about it with our children. We can't let just what's shown on the TV educate our children and raise our children. We have to have conversations about this. And we have to even take the time to say, well, when I was growing up, this is what I saw. To explain to your child, maybe your child doesn't watch any of it. Maybe your child still has outbursts or displays a lot of anger. You're trying to understand, where is that coming from? Even having the conversations with your children about what was your upbringing like. It's important for that dialogue and that conversation to continue with parent and child so that the healing process can happen. And if you as a parent are not equipped, or you don't feel like you're in a position to be able to do such a thing, seek help. As the doctor said, a therapist. We all, as African Americans, I'm a big fan of therapy, because the harm of what we experience and what we've seen in our childhood and what we're seeing right now requires assistance to make sense of it. If you see in your own children behavior that does not coincide with how you are raising them in your household, you have to take into account what mass media they're exposed to and what they've seen and what harm it's done to them. I'm gonna go to the next slide. Okay, so having said that, what does the Quran say? It says, it is the right of every It is the right of every child to be disciplined by wise and reasonable parents. A parent uses control and discipline to guide the child. Human beings by nature tend to lean toward evil. Allah says in the Quran, surely the soul is wont to command toward evil, except such as my Lord has mercy on. So may Allah have mercy on. These are wise words that I've found from alislam.org. May Allah have mercy on the one who helps his child toward righteousness by being good to him, appealing to him, teaching him knowledge, and training him. Luqman, the wise, told his son, my son, if you learn good etiquette when you are young, you will benefit from it when you are older. Whoever values good etiquette will give importance to it, and whoever gives it importance will take the trouble to learn it, and whoever takes the trouble to learn it will struggle in its search, and whoever struggles in the search will achieve it and benefit from it. My son, get accustomed to carrying out your own duties and work, and be patient over the difficulties you encounter from others. If you wish to acquire honor in the world, cut off your hope from what lies with others. Surely the prophets and the righteous reach their status by cutting off their hopes. So I want to now give us some more things for us to think about on how we either speak to our children or grandchildren, or even help if your grown children with their children by giving them some guidance and some direction. Even though they're maybe 30, 40 years old, they still are in need of your guidance and your understanding. So parents' obligation to a child. Where the holy religion of Islam has enumerated the rights of the parents and ordered the utmost act of goodness and kindness toward them, it has not forsaken the rights of the children. Children are the gifts granted by the Almighty. The parents are responsible for the well-being, safety, teaching, and training of their children. They will receive great reward and recompense for teaching and training their children well. If they are negligent in proper training of the child, then the loss will be theirs to bear. The infallible Ali Bait, A.S. alayhi salam, I'm assuming, have narrated numerous traditions in regards to the rights of children, which are enumerated as follows. Give a good name to the child. Respect the mother of the child. Teaching the Quran. Give suitable nourishment. Treating them with love. Helping them in doing good. I'm sorry, I can't see the screen. Islam view on raising children. So here are some tools that we can, again, can take with you to help you in the raising of your children. Give some advice. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Abdullah bin Abar, O children, I will teach you a few sentences, advice. Keep the boundaries of Allah, so he will take care of you. Keep the boundaries, then you will find him in front of you. Provide good examples as parents. Invite the child to pray. And those who believed and followed them, their offspring in faith, we will join with them, their offspring, and not, join with them, their offspring, and not, we will deprive them of their deeds in anything. Every person for what he earned is pledged. And enjoin on your family the prayer and the steadfast therein. Not, we ask you for provision, we provide for you, and outcome is for the righteousness. Make rules. Warn him with good words. So because mercy from Allah, you dealt gently with them. And if you had been rude and harsh at the heart, surely they would have dispersed from around you. Then pardon from them and ask forgiveness for them and consult them on the matter. Then when you have decided, then put trust on Allah. Indeed, Allah loves the ones who put trust in him. Al-Imran, there's dairies of Allah, so he will take care of you. Keep boundaries. Then you will find him in front of you. Praise when the child does something good. If you see your son doing good, son or daughter doing good, then praise and record. If your son does bad, rebuke and never record it. Pay attention to the child's surroundings. Someone depends on his friend's religion, then he should see with whom he befriends. Listen to his problems. Whoever releases one of the difficulties of a Muslim, surely Allah will release him a difficulty on the day of judgment. Whoever makes easy the affairs of others, surely Allah will facilitate him in the world and the hereafter. Educate him on the Prophet's ways. O Messenger of Allah, how can I help my son so that he can worship me? The Prophet answered, accepting his efforts, even if small, forgiving his mistakes, neither burdening him with a heavy burden, nor even scolding him with abusive words that can hurt his heart. So here is presented more ways to deal with the disobedient child in Islam. Give affection, love, and attention. Always believe in them. Do not spoil the child. Be calm and not easily angered. Do not complain to him. Never blame someone's mistake to him. Do not fight in front of him. Take him for a walk and relax. So that ends my presentation that I have for you all. If there are any questions, I'm open to and willing to listen.
So first of all, let me say alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah. Thank you, Sister Rasheedah. You've given me personally a lot to reflect on, and I'm sure our believers that are both watching now and will be watching in the future a lot. I know we only have 2 minutes left. I'm going to read the comment that Dr. Gloria wrote, and I also, it's a bit of a teaser because you'll be starting your class, and so if folks want to have some more discussion and some more questions, they have to sign up for the class so that they can have those. Dr. Gloria said, "This is an excellent presentation, Sister Rasheedah. I would like to add that to heal the atrocities of our parents and grandparents, we may very well take many future generations." I absolutely agree. Until the realization of downstream psychological damage of post-traumatic slavery syndrome is fully recognized and incorporated not only in the curriculum starting at preschool through all levels of higher ed and within the churches and all denominations and ethnicities, there will be no change. Lastly, we also have to destigmatize mental health issues and the necessary treatments to begin healing. I absolutely agree with you. If folks here on Talim, first of all, I'll ask you to unmic and just thank our dear sister, but please let us know if you want to sign up for the class and share. We'll be sending out something. You can share it to others as well. And this is for parents, but it's also for aunties, right? It's also for grandparents. It's also, if you have interactions with the young people, it takes a village. And so please don't feel as though this does not speak to you if you have not given birth to a child. If you serve in that role and you touch students, whether it's in a classroom or through other spaces, that you are part of that village. So. Walaikum assalam.
Thank you so very much. I apologize. I thought I was on mute. But anyway, what I wanted to say, when is the class? And thank you so very much, Sister Rasheedah. It's really needed. And the more we understand that it takes the village, and then everyone in the village may need help.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah.
Inshallah, I'm whenever the people say that they want to start the program, I'm ready for you. Is a situation where if we want to do it in person, if we want to do it via Zoom, if we want to do it at the start of the new year, I can make myself available to the community, because this is something that's, like I said, I know it's a necessity, and I know that time is of the essence, and the more time, the sooner we get started, the better. And like Sister Aisha said, this is for grandparents. This is the class would be for anybody who has contact with children, because any information that you can impart to someone who has a child, it could be of benefit to them. And I really, the goal is also to stop putting the blame on the parents and really try to understand what happened to the parents in their childhood, because we do a lot of, right now it's the teacher's fault, and then, or it's the parents' fault. But as long as we keep pointing fingers at who's at fault, we're never going to get to a solution.
Alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Beautiful presentation, Sister Rasheedah. I don't know if everybody saw it or not, but it's in the chat. So for those who are interested in signing up for the class, send in, I asked for people to put their name in the chat, but send an email or respond, better yet, respond to the text that's going to come out. So if you get the text, there's going to be a text that's going out in the next about 5 minutes or so, 5-10 minutes. So it'll be a form, and we'll take that information and pass it over to you, Sister Rasheedah, and we can figure out exactly when, when we'll start, when you will start.
All right. Well, Bismillah, may Allah continue to bless you all in your weeks to come. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.